Just in, rising tensions along the Venezuelan-Colombian border. Venezuela has closed another major border crossing as its president blames Colombian smugglers for the country's food shortages. Hard to figure out how that would work, but now hundreds of Colombians are being deported and arrested. Thousands more are reportedly fleeing Venezuela, fearing retaliation against them. We, of course, have been hearing a lot about the migration crisis in Europe, but we also want to highlight another crisis unfolding here in our hemisphere and the possible effects on U.S. national security. Robert Valencia, political analyst and writer for Global Voices, joins us now. So, Robert, break it down for us how a couple of thousands of Colombians being kicked out of Venezuela has to do with this sort of geopolitical game of chess having to deal with the remnants of Hugo Chavez, Maduro, the current president of Venezuela, and the United States.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your show. What we're seeing, and this is what I consider, is a smokescreen. I think President Maduro, what he's doing is just blaming all the economic woes from in Venezuela to the Colombian population, when in reality, what we're seeing, these are politics that have stemmed from the Chavez administration. Venezuela has over-relied on oil prices. They try to influence the rest of Latin American countries by selling oil at a very low price. And now that the prices of oil have fluctuated and they have plummeted by 50%, so now they're trying to blame on the most vulnerable population. Now, what we're seeing here is that of the 14,000 Colombians that have been targeted for deportation, at least 1,000 have already crossed the Colombian and Venezuela border.
All right, so we have these refugees fleeing, but desperate people do desperate things. Maduro is obviously dealing with a huge economic crisis. He's dealing with food shortages. His currency is free-falling. What kinds of things can he do next if blaming the Colombians don't work that could potentially destabilize such an important part of the world?
Another excuse that he has used all over these days is that there's an assassination plot against him by way of the paramilitaries. There's no proof of that whatsoever. He hasn't able to prove that he's been threatening President Juan Manuel Santos from Colombia, saying that he hasn't showed up for a meeting and to have a bilateral conversation. I think what we're seeing now is that there's a lot of indifference in the pan-regional scope. I mean, we have OAS, or the Organization of American States, here in Washington, D.C., that decided not to take over this case. We have UNASUR, or the Union of South American Nations. They have also turned a blind eye on this very difficult situation. One thing that I like to point out is that this can exacerbate what we've seen in Colombia. We have the second largest number of internally displaced persons in the world after Syria. So we're now paying attention not only to the people who are staying within Colombian borders, but those who are crossing the border. They have nothing. Right. I mean, they have waded into the river, you know, the Táchira River, crossing the border with very few belongings and children in arms.
Right. The pictures we put up are heartbreaking. Clearly, people who are running and fleeing for their lives. Obviously, another big fear would be that all those people would come north through Mexico and up into the United States. The other question is, what is Russia and Iran going to do about this? Because they've been obviously so close to Hugo Chavez's regime, now close to Maduro's regime there in Venezuela. Is there any option for Iran and or Russia to get involved in this? If so, how would that change things?
Well, I cannot say with certainty whether Russia and Iran could intervene in this crisis. As a matter of fact, Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil, who has closer ties to the Venezuelan regime, they have offered themselves to ease this problem. Now, of course, I'm not ruling out that Russia and Iran might have some interest in dealing with this situation, but I think they're trying to revamp the regional integration, and they're bringing the biggest players. You have, like I said, Argentina and Brazil that tend to be left-leaning in the Latin American context.
Well, as we've learned over time, it's certainly hard to stop these mass refugee flights, no matter what you do with them once they begin. Robert Valencia, appreciate your time and insights here on this important story. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.